Gary.
Gary.
Oi, Gary. I'm sad to announce that we're going back to Gary Land. We have to go back. He did a long form interview and there's too much in it. We're going back. He tried to, it's like Dr. K or Sam Harris. There's just too much there. So he appeared on this interview show called Depolarization in English, but it's a Portuguese channel. So the host is Portuguese, but he does English interviews as well. A little bit of a rationalist bent to him, the host. Right? I got that vibe. There was talk of steel manning. There was just rationalist motifs floating around. But it was towards the better end of the rationalist pool where he actually was talking about sources and this kind of thing and had prepared research, which is good. And we have to get into, when we do the longer episode, Gary's attempt to steelman other people's position. But not today, Matt. That is not today. So the host was presenting Gary with like data and graphs that kind of were counter to Gary's narrative. Graphs showing trends about inequality and whatnot, and like saying, but you're saying things have always been going like this and never like this, but look at this data, which seems to contradict the picture that you're presenting. And Gary had some choice words about his attitude towards graphs. So let's just hear this first.
And I admire your passion, bro. Another critique you get is that you never show any numbers. Like I showed you more graphs today than maybe you've shown on your whole YouTube channel. Is that because you don't trust the surveys or because it doesn't fit your simplistic view of things?
Listen, probably you already know this, right? But I'll tell you how these numbers work, all right? There's right-wing think tanks and there's left-wing think tanks. And they want to get the numbers that they want and they pay the money to the economist and they get the numbers that they fucking want. That's how economics works.
Look, we're looking at a new one now from Equality Trust. The previous one was Fairness Foundation. So if these guys have any kind of bias, it's in your direction. And these guys, do you think these are the top last 100 years of wealth inequality, and it's basically gone down, right? And it's gone, the wealth share of the bottom, what is it? Bottom 10% has gone up, and
since 1900,
the bottom 50%. I could only find data till 2020.
Yeah, to be clear.
So things are much better in general.
Than they were in 1900.
No, than they were in 1980. Or they're the same as they were. No, they're much better. Look at the red line. See things, they're kind of like they were in 1980.
Well, I've already covered this. I think the top 0.1% is very undercalculated.
Okay, so you think the top 10% is not a good metric? We should be looking at the top 0.1%.
It's not about whether you look at the top 10% or whether you look at the top 0.1%. It's about whether your numbers are good or not.
Okay, so where are your numbers?
Listen, I'm out there getting fucking 50 million views a month on YouTube. You want me to start a think tank as well? I tell you what, when I'm at it, why don't I start a political party? Listen, I'm not fucking Superman here. What do you want me to do?
I want you just to show numbers.
And then who makes the videos, Thomas? Who makes the videos?
Oh, you can hire someone to...
Make the videos?
No, hire someone. Listen, I want to show people that wealth inequality is rising. Help me get that data.
Video.
Yeah. Interesting response there. So Gary's an economist, one of the best economists in the world, according to him. And he's also very mathematical. But you can't trust... They're like data.
Numbers.
Yeah. Not interested.
No. The point that he makes that think tanks are able to, selectively cite data and whatnot in order to advance narratives.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
That's true. That's a valid point. But as the host has pointed out, he's actually showing him graphs from like charities that are focused on reducing inequality, right? And Gary is dismissing them. And one of the things that he says as he goes on is like, he thinks that the top 0.1%, they're able to just, hide all their wealth. So like if you look, for example, at home ownership and, you look at which various income brackets are owning all the houses, it looks like there's quite a lot of people on, upper middle class incomes that are owning houses. But Gary says, well, but yes, because the actual like amount owned by the mega rich, it's all hidden, right? It's not in the figures. So you can't trust the figures.
Yeah, but of course the problem is if you look at those graphs of the income distributions and wealth distributions, right, it's true that there's this, it gets very pointy, right? It's like an exponential curve. But the area under the curve, which is the actual amount of wealth, like the top 10% and the top 5%, even the top 20%, those chunks matter a lot more. In fact, in terms of like holding a lot more wealth, like they're contributing to wealth inequality too. So It's convenient. But the point is not quibbling about trends and numbers, right? I think wealth inequality is a problem, and it has been increasing in recent years. But the point is that like the data does matter. The data matters a lot. And in fact, you can't have a sensible discussion about any of this without looking at the data. Yes, you got to do it fairly. You can look at things like Gini coefficients and stuff, which aggregate information from across the wealth distribution curve, not just selecting the cutoff anywhere you like. The real point here that he's making to Gary is that you don't substantiate anything. You don't provide anything other than a simplistic narrative. And Gary's response is, I got 80,000 viewers on my YouTube channel.
50 million, Matt.
50 million. Whatever.
Who's going to make the videos if I'm doing the research? And the guy's like, well, you could pay someone, to get the numbers. But, as we know, Matt, he's too busy because the person he was going to pay is like the assistant that might respond to the email. There wasn't a line in the budget for a researcher. And just in case you think we're straw manning Gary to the extent to which like he's dismissing data as important. So here's the second clip, Matt.
My last video I did before I came out was a shout out to these think tanks. What the fuck are you doing? Where are you? Where are you? Listen, I'm one guy. And I think I'm having a lot of impact. I could choose. I was working for the think tank. I worked for a think tank doing this kind of stuff in London. And I could see they weren't going to get anywhere. So I left. I could see what we needed was a YouTube channel. So I started a YouTube channel. I'm working on a YouTube channel. I don't work for a think tank anymore. Listen, there's 75 think tanks in London that should be doing this shit. And I'm trying to talk to them to get them to do this shit. But I can't do it all. Listen.
Yeah, but come on. I had 1 day to prepare this and I found 10 graphs.
Listen. Did you make those graphs? Listen, if you want me to bring up... Listen, I told you.
I don't want you to make the graphs.
Yeah.
I just want you to show some graphs.
Listen, I worked in the sausage factory, okay? Listen, I know these graphs are bullshit. I know the graphs are all bullshit. I know...
From Fairness Foundation and from Equality...
Listen, all of the graphs are bullshit.
Okay.
But no, you know that. Come on, you know that. You know the graphs are bullshit.
If they're based on a survey, I understand your critique. But if they're based on different data points, maybe, I don't know, you're the economist.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How many traders do you think are looking at these graphs?
I have no idea.
That many? 0. These graphs are not for the economists. They're not for the traders. They're for the public. They're bullshit. Traders want to know what's happening. Listen, when I was a trader and I was making, tens of millions of dollars a year for the bank, you think they asked me to bring up graphs? No, the reason they back me is because I'm right again and again. You want to know evidence? Go and watch my first video on my channel.
The COVID one.
June 2020. What does it say?
One. Yeah.
It says that there's going to be a cost of living crisis, an inflation crisis, a massive increase in prices, of the gold price, of stock prices, of housing prices. Was I right on every single one of those predictions?
Seems to me, yeah.
Yeah. The same guy who was right on every single one of his predictions in 2011 was right on every single one of his predictions in 2020. And that's why banks pay me millions of pounds to manage their money.
Touche.
Like, we were talking about Chris Langan doing basic bitch guru shit, but to me, this is pretty straightforward. Like, all graphs are bullshit. I know how to make graphs. I can make you any graphs. You want me to make you graphs? Like, you can't trust graphs. And look, how do you know I'm right? I made prediction. Like I said, that there's going to be inflation at the start of COVID and that there's going to be like issues in the economy and stuff. Like, this is very common. Eric Weinstein, claims that he predicted the financial collapse, right?
And it's basically conspiratorial, right? Like it's the same line that you would hear from anti-vaxxers, right? You say, you try to present them data on diseases, vaccination rates, mortality rates, morbidity, stuff like that. And they go, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can't trust any of that data. They'll spin it to make it. And yes, there's a grain of truth there. Of course, there are like think tanks with agendas. There are ways to lie with statistics, as we all know, right? But to make out that economics, like economic analysis, doesn't involve data, or the data isn't available, reliable data isn't available in economics, is Looney Tunes. That could only be convincing to someone who doesn't know anything about economics, surely.
Well, even you heard the guy say, yes, of course, like people can lie, but it depends on the quality of the data and what you're looking at, right? And that's right. The guy is right, but Gary's dismissal is all graphs are bullshit.
It's
all graphs.
And it's blanket because he points out that the graphs that Gary didn't like because they were inconsistent with Gary's very strong narrative, right? And it's like, it's not that it, like, there is a version of Gary's narrative which is correct, right, about growing inequality, wealth inequality, but because Gary is just so sweeping in his claim and doesn't make any caveats or any qualifications whatsoever, he dismisses anything that disconfirms that. So he's presented with graphs from charities, right, and activist groups that are focused on reducing wealth inequality, right? And they're spinning, like, that's inconsistent. Like, he doesn't have a response to that, right? Because his response was, they're all just lying. They're all just getting paid by billionaires to lie. It's like,
look, he's worked, Matt. He's worked as he knows how the sausage is made.
He's worked as a trader. Yeah, I know. But
not just a trader.
No, in
he's
a think tank.
At think tanks and at academia. That's why he can dismiss them all.
That's why he can dismiss them all. That's right. I know. We know about his amazing academic career at the LSE.
There's also a part where he claims that no one in banks is paid to look at graphs. Like he says, like nobody in a bank is looking at a graph.
No.
And I was just like, that's such obvious bullshit. Like, FX trading involves...
There's a lot of graphs involved.
There's people looking at, projections and looking at trend lines and all this kind of thing. Like and also, the bank does employ people who are financial analysts and stuff who produce graphs, not to mention all the secondary people that do produce bullshit graphs that work for banks as, like management consultants or this kind of thing. But Gary, my point is, banks are paying lots of people to produce lots of graphs. Lots of people in banks are using graphs to make, decisions and stuff. And if they weren't, it would all be based on vibes. Like,
yes.
Because there is a part later where the guy asked him, well, if you're not using
data
graphs, like, what are you doing? And Gary's answer is he's listening to the people. Like, he's talking to the, the working class people. So he understands. And he's right because all his predictions are constantly right. Like, they've all been validated. Go to his YouTube channel and you can see them. And, So, Matt, that's our Gary. We're gonna see more of this. This is the tip of the iceberg from that interview. But there is one other Gary clip that I gotta play. Gary content. Now, Matt, listen to these two fine gentlemen discussing a topic. Actually, you may have heard of them. They're from this podcast, Decoding the Gurus. They claim that he is the most recognized public campaigner on inequality as well. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying he hasn't been successful in growing his, YouTube channel and kind of getting attention on UK media. But there's a lot of people who have had entire careers dedicated to, highlighting wealth inequality. And it does remind me a little bit that Russell Brand, when he was on his left-wing revolution phase, right, he would constantly make this claims that we're starting a movement. We're going to get politics back, so that it's actually taking care of the little people that, these elites. So the rhetoric is very similar. Made comparisons to Russell Brand, right? And the kind of rhetoric that he was spewing back when he was on his revolution tour. Now, as it so happens, Gary, on a piece of content where he's talking about how all economists are wrong and liars, whatnot, had this to say.
That's kind of so people just don't question the economy because they feel like they're not allowed in the debate. I always remember, you remember back when Russell Brand was trying to get into like politics, and he went on Newsnight with Evan Davies, who's Oxford PPE graduate, so he studied economics at Oxford. And this guy went on and he was talking about how living standards are falling and life is getting worse and all this kind of stuff, which I agree with and I think is important. And Evan Davies pulled up on his little TV behind him a 150-year graph of I think it was GDP per capita or wage growth over time. And he goes, sorry, my 150-year graph says you're wrong and life is getting better. And this is why people feel like they can't have opinions on the economy. And this is, I think, one of the things which I would like to achieve with this channel is making people feel empowered, like they have the right to speak about the economy and be listened to. And ordinary people to have the right to say, it's getting worse for me and my family. And to not have fucking Evan Davis, who might be a nice guy for all I know, probably I'll meet him one day, you know, say, no, I've got a graph. You know, Russell Brand doesn't understand graphs. Okay, I don't know the guy, but you know, probably he doesn't, right? You know, like, you know, I could pull out a big fucking graph and slap you on the face with it if I want. You know, you're a cameraman, you're not trained to understand economics graphs, you know what I mean? It's absurd. So I think people often think that I hate bankers and rich people, but this should be like the big fundamental economic question of the last like 15 years. And it was mentioned, that fact was mentioned in a lecture. So I put my hand up and said like, well, why do you think it was? Why do you think spending stayed low? And this professor said, we're not really sure, but we think it was because of an exogenous shock to consumption savings preferences. And I think this is actually a really good example of how these guys are so obsessed and fixated on the maths and the modeling that they have basically made themselves completely idiotic.
I forgot that he went off on graphs again. But you heard them, Matt, the direct, you know, kind of, I really liked this Russell Brand back when he was calling out the elites and, you know, and then these rich idiots were, you know, showing graphs and trying to take him down and things. So like Gary sees the parallel with himself and Russell Brand as well, which I just thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. You called it, Chris. We'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Well, you said it too. That's just, I was like more direct. When I was trying to get the clip with you, it was meandering all over the place. So
that sounds like me.
Yeah. But you know, the other thing there, Matt, as well, was like, you know, you hear the populist thing about like these people looking down at you. I want you to be able to have opinions on the economy and stuff. I think people are allowed opinions on the economy, and like the issue is if you've done no research or whatever, you're just talking about your experience. That doesn't always translate into understanding, you know, the entire economy of a given country. There was a bit where he was like, Russell Brand doesn't understand graphs. You, the cameraman, like you can't understand graphs. That was like, steady on.
That's right. I know. He's just a cameraman, Chris. He's just
a cameraman wouldn't understand
a graph.
Fancy graphs. And I'm like, people can understand graphs.
But it's the rhetoric. I mean, the difficult thing in talking about this guy, especially to I think our audience, Ed, who was like me, sympathetic to the issue which is
the wealth inequality is a problem.
Is that he's doing all of the populist things and doing all of the guru things and centering himself and his grand mission and hitting all of these tropes without offering very much at all. So I think he's not someone who's actually helpful on this side of the argument. I mean, that kind of populist thing of, you know, they won't let you talk about this. You know, real people.
I know.
You real people, you know, their voice needs to be heard. But those fat cats up there, they're keeping us down or whatever. Like it's just, there are different versions, right, of this grievance sort of mongering, which you find it all different in all kind of different ways. And he leans into all of it really hard without providing active solutions. And like, the truth is that there are multiple causes of growing inequality, right? Some of them have got to do with just the, you know, automation stuff that's happening in the economy. Some of it's got to do with the, you know, rising asset prices, basically, which means that people who've already got assets tend to get much more richer. And when, you know, AI is coming along, it's probably going to contribute more to it, right? So it is an important issue. It's just that when you point to the wrong simplistic solution to a real problem, you're not helping.
I think it can be that Gary could be pointing to like a significant contributing factor, but his narrative is just very simplified, right? And actually, you'll see, Matt, when we get into the rest of that interview, that the interviewer brings up this point with him as well.
Like when you say that the top 0.1% are buying up all the houses, or are buying up so many houses that it's causing all the rest of them to go up somewhere, that's not true, right? That's not the reason.
No, Matt, wait, because the guy shows him a graph to highlight that it's not true. Like, look at house ownership in, you know, the UK or wherever and the income brackets, but that's a graph, Matt. That's a graph. It's like a pie chart, but you know, it's a type of graph.
Graphs are forbidden. Graphs are not admissible as evidence, right? No numbers.
Gary's answer is, you think that graph is right? Like, you think that graph is so, he does have these answers, but it is something of like, who says you can't talk about the economy recently? Have politicians not been talking about the economy?
Everyone,
I thought the cost of living crisis is on the lips of every politician. And like, Bernie Sanders talks about the economy. Jeremy Corbyn talked about the economy. Donald Trump talks about the economy.
I can tell you, Chris, we're down under, where culture war politics does not feature so much in the main fray between the two political main parties. The economy is all they talk about, right? The cost of living, inflation, unemployment, cost of housing, all of that stuff. They're not necessarily doing, they don't necessarily have sensible policies to address these issues. In fact, they're kind of doing some populist nonsense, much like Gary's doing, but certainly everyone is talking about it.
Like, also the other thing, Matt, like, politicians are famous for getting the price of things wrong and it causing a controversy. How much does a loaf of bread cost? $100? What is it now? Or, whenever they tried to do the math of the people thing and they vastly under or overestimate the cost of things, it always is like, big news that they don't actually know what it's like for people out there, right? And I think there's legitimacy to that, and they get hoisted by their own petard for trying to do the appeal to I'm just a man like you. I buy my sausage rolls for $15 or whatever they cost, like this kind of thing. But yeah, so it's just this narrative. They don't let you talk. And we'll hear much more of it. Gary saying, the economics professors, even the think tanks in this, the inequality think tanks, they're not doing things right, Matt. The only guy that's getting things done is Gary with his YouTube channel. It's 50 billion views a year. And it's just a very familiar refrain in the guru sphere.
It's very convenient that Gary can't be expected to do anything, including even form any of the details around his recommendations or the main topic of his podcast, because he's too busy, he's too tired, he's too stressed just managing this massively successful monetized podcast. He's got his plate full. He's got to focus on that. I understand.
Yes, he did get the huge advance for his book, which is a bestseller, but he could be doing other things, Matt. He doesn't need to do this. It's nothing to do with him. But anyway, we'll hear more of that in the weeks to come. This is just a taster of the extra Gary content that's coming. And, this is what we do, Matt. We cover people. Occasionally we check in on them. What has Lex Friedman been doing? What has Sam Harris got up to? Huberman, Peterson, Dr. K. It's much better for us when they haven't been doing anything.